And good afternoon, Muskegon. How you doing? My name is Gregory T. Roberts, and this show is touring into, and it's our first year of 2023, and we are excited to be back. There's a lot of stuff to talk to you about. Listen, if you're driving and you want to see the show, you can watch the show on Facebook when you get home because the show repeats itself on WVSLP Facebook site or M106. Also, the Emoji app, you can watch it. Also, YouTube as well. Um, Let me get our co-host right in. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, brother. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Pastor Melvin C. Burns II. I don't know how we can say this. Happy Resurrection Day
No,
or
Insurrection Day.
Insurrection,
Yeah,
Resurrection,
yeah.
Insurrection.
Let's not mix those two up. Yeah,
No, no, don't want to do
yeah,
that. But no, to go to a serious point that like 2 years ago that this country was attacked,
yes,
and for those brave people that protected our country and democracy,
yes.
um, and the people that lost their lives, what can you say to those people and the
Um,
people that did the right thing in keeping our democracy going? Our hats off to those people.
yeah, when all of that started, we had no idea how it was going to end. We really no script, no plan to follow. We had no idea. We found out later there were people who put themselves between in harm's way.
Hmm.
Capitol police officers who stood the ground that basically tried to save the lives of the members of the House of Representatives. So want to acknowledge those officers who stood their ground and did their job and their duty. I don't want us to ever minimize
Never.
place that day. It was not a small thing. It wasn't a little dust up. We don't ever want to minimize what took place and make sure that that never ever happens again.
Right. I mean, there's been so much going on this week with the Buffalo game with
Mm,
Hellman,
hmm.
and man, continue to pray for that guy.
Yes, yes,
It's by the grace of God that that guy is living.
yes.
You guys know the story. You know what's going on in Washington with the speaker. That clown race, clown car thing that's going on. They're now in the 13th vote, and things are heading McCarthy's way. What I want to talk to you guys about, I've talked to our time off. We talked to a lot of people, and over the time, we realized that there are a lot of things that you people wanted to talk about, and the best way to describe it is that it's going to be painful. So, do you rip off the band-aid quickly or do it slowly? There's issues that are facing our communities that we're not addressing, such as drug abuse that we've talked a little bit about, suicide, mental health, and it's going to go deeper. What do you think, Pastor Burns?
Well, I'm gonna rip the band-aid off quick kind of person, but you're right. There's things we don't talk about. We hint at them. We kind of gloss around them. But again, mental health, depression, molestation. We kind of talk around them. Then we're surprised when they happen again. We're surprised when they happen, but we haven't talked about them. We haven't taught about them. We haven't educated ourselves and our family and our community about them. So I'm looking forward to us maybe going deeper as opposed to broader in some of our discussion this year.
We're going to start today. We're going to start today and talk about an issue that we don't talk about. And we are so blessed to have not only a man that has been around for many years. He is one of our election. He is the head of one of our election team. But not only that, he's a giver of the community. He's been a lover of this radio station for years and years. And I am just so happy to have him on today. Put your hands together for Mr. Jon Convington. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, my brothers. How you guys doing?
Hey,
Hey, Happy 2023 to you.
Good to,
Absolutely.
good to see
Some
you,
of
brother.
us, it looks like some of us shared the new year in a warmer climate, but I won't mention any names.
Well,
Uh,
let's just say it wasn't me.
wait a minute, and I won't say it was warmer climate either because it was wet, rainy, and not warm.
I
But
guess that's
hey,
debatable on whether or not it was warm. If it was above 50, that's what
okay, it was 54 degrees, so I'll give you that. John, we have you on today, and thank you so much for all that you do. But John, we decided that we need to take this show a step heavier and talk about the issues that affect our community. Um, you have been working on an issue for several years. You work on many issues, but I want you to
include
talk
me.
about. Huh?
I'm one big issue too.
Yeah.
So
But you been working on an issue, and I want you to talk to people and why is it so important that we break it down.
as it relates to Men of Color Read,
Yes.
well, Men of Color Read is an initiative that we started in Muskegon County and particularly Edgewood Elementary 6 years ago. I think this would be the seventh year, even though, well, I'll talk more about that later, but this would be the seventh year, believe it or not, Melvin.
Wow.
You can believe that. So 7 years straight, we've been in Muskegon County, and Men of
Okay.
Right now we have
okay,
the. Oh, okay. So the
I guess
guys are back. Okay.
I guess
Yeah.
we're back. Uh, but it's real simple. It's just a literacy initiative that we created to help eradicate functional illiteracy in the urban core, which is a problem. I often say that there may be problems just as great as functional illiteracy in the urban core, but I don't believe that there are any problems greater than functional
Hmm.
illiteracy. And our objective really is to make reading cool, to make reading hip. And so monthly, for, like I said, 7 years in Muskegon County, we've shown up at a school, at an elementary school in the county, to do just that, to read to kids and to show them that reading is cool and that reading is something that they should take pride in and something that they should be excited about doing. It's life changing. And we also believe that consistency is really what makes the difference. And so we've
Hmm.
done it month after month after month after month. This past year, we actually even did the summer at Marquette Elementary in Muskegon. Muskegon Public Schools at Marquette Elementary. We did the entire summer, which was a new thing for us because typically we operate function during the school year. But this past year, they said, you know, we'd really love for you guys to be here during the summer. And so if you could say a year round, become a year round program. And I don't know if
Hmm.
a lot of people know it or not, but there are laws in about 26 states. I believe it's 26, 27 states law. We're not talking a school district implemented policy. We're talking about a law signed by Congress that states that if kids are not reading by a certain grade, which is the third grade, that they are eligible for retention.
Hmm.
That particular law didn't go into effect until right before COVID. So there was a moratorium, I guess that's the right word, on implementing it, if you will. But now that things are getting somewhat back to normal, I believe that when it's all said and done, that little brown boys who look brown and black boys who look like the three of us will be most impacted
Hmm.
by that law. And so we're all about being proactive instead of reactive. Sometimes things go a certain direction and then we hurry up, get together and try to react to what's happened. And so we're saying we believe that we're going to be kids who look like us are going to be most affected. And so let's do something about this now instead of later. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Men of Color Read on social media. Greg, not Greg, not you, Greg. You haven't been yet, but Melvin is a regular reader. The kids love him. He's been at Edgewood. He's at Marquette Elementary School, and it is really impactful. Now, I guess one might beg to differ. More impactful for who? Us or the kids? Because I
Mhm.
don't know who gets more out of it, really. It's very, very gratifying to regularly go before kids and do something that we know is crucial to their well-being.
Mhm. Pastor Burns.
We have a tendency sometimes to diminish small steps, and the fact that we show up there once a month and read to kids. And I think half of these kids see a black man read to them. They're not going to church, so they don't see a pastor read. Dads may play games, have fun, listen to music, but to sit down and read a story, we don't want to underestimate how rarely that's taking place. We're seeing that, and they say the kids love it, and we have a great time.
It's amazing.
Jo-
It's been an amazing thing.
John, talk a little bit more why this is important.
It's important because it's a well-known fact that there is a third grade to prison pipeline. And what I mean by that is when determining beds for prisons, they look at third grade reading levels to determine how many beds they are going to need at a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So we call it the elementary school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wait to do those calculations when somebody's in 12th grade or once they've gotten in trouble. They literally do those calculations for third graders because statistics show that if someone is not reading efficiently by third grade, more often than not, they are the majority of the juvenile delinquency system.
Mm.
And the majority, and I'm not talking majority as in 51%, I'm talking the majority of the juvenile delinquency system and the majority of prison inmates are functionally illiterate. And functional illiteracy or literacy is directly correlated to every single being, every single fabric of our being.
Mm-hmm.
Literacy is connected, or lack thereof, is connected to everything. So it's not just people think, oh, it's just about the book or it's just word. No. It's about comprehension. It's about reasoning. It's about diplomacy. It's about all of those things that literacy help you with in your day-to-day life. I don't know if you want to jump in there, Melvin.
Yeah, again, this idea of just functional illiteracy, which is again reading prescriptions. You leave emergency doctors give you instructions. So those of us we take those things for granted, and we don't realize. I know I sit all the time with some certain family members that just everyday things. Hey, what does this mean? Can you read this for me? And we take those things for granted. Where we get instructions and they're written, and just to be able to read them and comprehend, and we don't understand the real struggle that people have. So if we can get kids again to understand, and it seems like there's forces that work against teaching kids to read, and so we have to counter that, with entertainment and all of the things that we got to overcome that. And this idea of no, you still have to know how to read.
There's a brother in Muskegon who learned how to read, if I'm not mistaken, in his 70s
Mm.
or perhaps late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm going to get his last name. I know I'm going to mess up his last name, but I thought his last name was, uh, maybe it'll come to me. But anyway, I first met him at Reed Muskegon, their annual dinner, that banquet fundraiser that they do every year. And
Mm-hmm.
I hosted MC a couple of years ago. And that's where I met him. I believe his name is Span. I
That
could be
sounds
wrong.
familiar.
Okay. He was a bricklayer. What is it? A masoner? Mason?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, in Muskegon yesteryear, a lot of the buildings in Muskegon, particularly downtown and other places, when they were in the building phase, I guess in the 40s and 50s, maybe the 50s, late 50s. I think he's in his 80s now. But anyway, he learned to read recently in like the last 5 or 6 years, and he's still learning to read. He never knew how to read, but he was
Mm-hmm.
one of the most gifted bricklayers, from what I understand, in Muskegon County.
Mm-hmm.
He says that he is certain that he has been cheated out of millions of dollars
Wow.
Wow.
because they knew that he could not read.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they used him. Now, he assumed that he was being used, but at the time, we're talking the 50s, he's got a large family, he is making money, but he had no way of countering what was happening to him because he was illiterate. And he tells that story.
Mm. How important is it for, like you gave that great story about that younger man, the older man, 70. How important it
Maybe
is,
80s. I think he's
80s.
probably, yeah, he might be in his
How
80s.
important is it for us adults who struggle
Mm.
to be honest and to come out and to change that scenario?
Wow.
Melvin?
Well, it's interesting because, and we talk about our community. I'll go into some stores and you'll see like an older Hispanic person, or even or maybe somebody from the Middle East, and you'll see the younger kids a lot of times reading something for the parent. And I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking how in our community, there was a time we saw literacy skyrocket. Our parents and great grandparents said, "Get that education, learn to read."
Hmm.
And I'm sure now we're seeing a tapering off of that. Much to I'm sure our ancestors' displeasure. And this has nothing to do with people learning trades and skills and those things. To be able to read for life.
Yeah.
Again, read to take care of yourself. Read to make sure, you buy a home or you buy a car, people aren't taking advantage of you. Um, and so I think we, for like you said, Greg, for adults in this community, is we have to make sure we aren't. I hate to use the word shaming that gets overused, but as we talk about even this year, pulling the band-aid off, that recognizing there are people who have problems reading, and let's see what we can do about it. There's young people struggling, there's kids struggling with reading, and rather than find ways to cover it up and make excuses, let's roll up our sleeves and find a way to dig in.
Right.
That's good.
So,
I had a guy in Kent County, because we also have men of color read Kent County.
Hmm.
This is the third year there in Kent County. And I had a guy reach out to me once, handsome, fun, charismatic, former athlete. He reached out to me once and he said, "I appreciate what you're doing." He's in his 30s. He said, about 32. He said, I appreciate what you're doing. He says, my reading is probably at a third or fourth grade level.
Mm.
Mm.
You would never know it though if he didn't tell you, or if you weren't in a situation with him. But I thought about this. I was working on a project and I hired him to work with me on this project. I was working on a freelance project and I hired him, and some of the very simple tasks that he was supposed to do, he would always figure out a way to get out of them. But one
Mm.
of them he attempted to do, and it was a mess.
Mm.
And I remember saying to him, did you see what you did? Or something along those lines. I didn't know that he was illiterate, functionally illiterate. I
Mhm.
didn't know. But when I look back on the frustration that he had in those tasks, then I realized, oh, this brother is functionally illiterate. And the reason that we say functionally illiterate is because you function enough to almost get by.
Yeah.
And I say almost.
Mhm.
You function enough to almost get by. You're the life of the party, or you're attractive, or you're stylish, or you're charismatic, or you joke a lot, or whatever it is. And we've had guys come to Men of Color Read in Kent County. I've had a couple guys come who don't read, which is fine, who come and they tell me privately, I struggle to read.
Mm.
I just want to be here around the brothers and I want to eat the lunch, which
Wow.
which is which is fine. I respect that. And my response always is, what can we do to help you? Because even though we're geared toward uh, 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 elementary school age kids, if brothers are saying to me, and it's been about 4 or 5 of them now, between Muskegon and Grand Rapids, if brothers are saying to me, yo, bro, I can't read, or I really read like a third grader or fourth grader, then that's an opportunity that we might not have had there not been a Men of Color Read to begin with, because that's not something that brothers, grown men, just go around admitting.
Right.
That I
John, please, John, I don't want to stop you, but John, please, we gonna dedicate the next couple several months talking about real issues, taking the band-aid off, no matter how it hurts, and deal with these issues. Would you please say what you just said again? Because it's very important.
I don't know what I said, but I'm a little
You
older.
talk about older guys, older people not knowing how to read.
Yeah, there are many brothers. If 4 or 5 brothers have reached out to me to admit that they can't read, men whom I know, if they're saying, yo, bro, I can't read, imagine how many brothers can't. Imagine that's just a small percentage of those that I happen to have some sort of connection with, who've acknowledged that they can't read. They've taken this brave route to admit that they can't read.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't know that had there not been a Men of Color Read to begin with, then those conversations probably would have not come up. And so, and I've seen brothers in the classroom. I've seen some brothers who come who may struggle a bit with reading. And you know what I tell them? Bravo, brother, that you have taken the initiative,
Yes.
because you looking to help others be better, you're going to be better as a result of it. This really is a reciprocal type of thing. You come to Men of Color Read, you feel a sense of responsibility, you feel a sense of gratification, you feel like I come out of there thinking, okay, I've got to be a better man. I've
Hmm.
got some areas that I struggle in. It's not reading, but I've got areas that I struggle in that as like most human beings, I haven't met a perfect one. I haven't met a perfect one yet in the physical sense. But how can I be better? What can I do to be better? What are my shortcomings? So we've all got them, and that we need to work on day by day. In this particular case, it's literacy. In this particular case, it's functional illiteracy. In this particular case, it's primarily people who look like you and me in the urban core who are struggling with literacy at a much higher rate than our white counterparts in the suburbs.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm. Talk, hey, John, talk about, uh, especially because of COVID, we lost those years of where kids, and even before then, we have in schools where kids are basically, a lack of better words, being warehoused, moved grade to grade to grade, still not knowing how to read at a correct level.
Well, COVID devastated math and reading. It
Mhm.
did. And I'm not in judgment of anybody because I know without a doubt, had I not been in school in the physical sense, I probably would have flunked. I needed that one on one. I needed the
Mhm.
structure. I needed to be in the classroom. That's just what I needed. I'm speaking for me.
Mhm.
And so it's no surprise that reading and math went down. And that's all over, not just in the urban core, but in the
Mhm.
suburbs and
That's
schools
all
with,
over.
and schools with lots of money. They saw drastic changes in reading and math as well. And so imagine what it did to the urban core. COVID really the head wave that we were making, COVID just came in and just slapped that right out of the way. And I feel like we're starting all over again,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
we don't give up. We start and then we keep going and hopefully we won't have another COVID type pandemic because our kids suffered tremendously as a result of COVID. That's a great question.
Yeah.
What does that say to the parents, about what can we learn from COVID? Because we went from, oh, we like to spend more time with our kids, and now we got to spend more time with our kids, and it's like, I can't wait till they go back to school. But during that time, it was like they have to learn via computer, via you. What are some of the things, as far as learn we can learn from COVID, as far as teaching our kids for in case another situation happens?
I think one of the things that we can learn, and I don't know what your thoughts are, Melvin. There are several things that we can learn, but one thing is as a parent of a school age kid. I'm not a parent of a school age kid, but I'm saying as if I were a parent of a school age kid, I would think that I would learn, really so much of what my child gets. I might be the one that has to give it to them.
Hmm.
Maybe it's up to me. I need to be more involved.
Mhm.
If I don't know, maybe I need to learn
Yeah.
because a pandemic could happen.
Mhm.
It's not likely one happens to that degree. It's not a probability, but it's a possibility that one could happen again in 2 years. Maybe it's not probable, but it's possible. And I think that it says we've got to be prepared because we don't know when, where, what, and it's my kid. And so I've got to see to it that I instill everything in my kid that I possibly can because we found out during COVID that school in the conventional sense might not be. How long were they out of school?
Almost what, a year?
Year, some longer.
And the way that they're conducting schools now with this AB system, you
Yeah.
might be in reading maybe twice a week.
Yeah. Well,
or
and keep
English twice a week.
this in mind. Teaching a student in person in a classroom is totally different to trying to teach a student something online. So we went from Friday, hey, guess what? Start Monday, you're gonna be teaching your students online. That's not how teachers were trained. So they weren't trained to enter. So that's a whole different type of teaching. And so, I mean, and God bless the teachers, they did the best they could, but that's a whole different way of trying to teach and students trying to learn. But I do think, John, you hit the nail on the head. It's that idea of parents having to be a lot more engaged. And I'm probably was guilty of this too. Is as long as I'm not getting bad reports, then you must be doing what you're supposed to be doing at school, and then bring me the grades home. But to be engaged day to day, are you doing your homework? Okay, TV off, off. This is homework time. But to stand over their shoulder and watch it and stop saying, "Hey, this is the way we did it," um, parents have to be a little more engaged.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things. Hopefully, we learn from that. And
absolutely.
and I tell people this all the time. Uh, Education, as we know, it's in this country is about 150 years old.
Yes, sir.
Literacy took off from when uh, local municipalities and the government said we're going to have school systems. That idea in this country is not that old. Late
That's good. That's a good point.
1890s. So
That's a good point.
before that, that's how people learned at home. And then we went from that to the one-room schoolhouses and older students teaching younger students. So this whole way of grades and all of that—that's really 100 years, maybe a little
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
So we're still pretty new in this whole way of trying to teach. And again, we see the problems with trying to teach 20 or 30 students that all learn differently with maybe one or two learning styles. And so again, it's still saying, hey, parents, just because they teach it this way at school may not be the way your child learns.
I'm gonna tell you guys a story
That's good, Melvin.
that happened to me. We were going to recruit classes, recruit kids to be on the bowling team, and we went to the middle school, and it was this kid holding the door and wouldn't let us in. And I was like, "You little brat!" But I asked the principal to let me talk to that kid. Said, "Give me 10 minutes. Let me talk to that kid." And I was like, and they were saying that this kid is a troublemaker. He's down to the principal's office every day. And so I said, give me 10 minutes to talk to this kid. And I talked to the kid, what's your name? Where you live? What's going on in your life? Why are you acting out? And come to find out why he was acting out is because he was held behind and all his friends were in a different grade. He was left behind. So he felt a way of getting attention was to act out. And so this reading thing is extremely important, John. John?
Yeah, it is. Like I said, there may be some problems as great as, but there are none greater than. And in my opinion, reading is paramount. I don't know if I told you this story, Melvin, when we were at Marquette last month, but uh, the classroom that I went in, I was in the last 2 months, the 2 months prior, and or at least a month prior. And so when I go into the classroom, this kid says they're all in the circle or sitting there on the rug, and this kid says, he looks up at me, he says, "I thought you was lying." And I said, "You mean you thought I was telling a story?" Because I couldn't say the word lying.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have got jacked up.
Oh,
Lying in third grade.
no, we couldn't say lie in our house either.
Oh, no.
But he said, "I thought you was," he said, "No, not a story. I thought you was lying." And I said, "What did you think I was lying about?" I said, "What did you think I was telling a story about?" He says, "You said you was coming back this month."
Mm.
That's something.
He said, "And you did." Now, this particular kid had been a little rambunctious, but I can handle that
Yeah, yeah.
because I know that with consistency breaks down a lot of that rambunctiousness unless there's other things going on. And sometimes it's a combination. There's other stuff going on with them and there's some just rambunctiousness because they're accustomed to a revolving door of people, particularly people who look like them, men who look like them. Let's just be specific. But the month prior, he was a little rambunctious. This month, when he saw that I came back, I had him. I had his attention
Mhm.
because now he's thinking maybe this guy, and he's not articulating that necessarily, but his feeling is maybe he's going to be around. Maybe he's going to be here. Maybe he tries to honor his word. Again, he's third grade. He's probably not articulating that specifically that way, but that's what he's feeling. And so for the rest of that class, I was able to call on him. I would look at him. I could see this twinkle in his eye, like that's my guy there.
Mhm.
And so just to add to the consistency of us showing up.
You know, I don't want people to hear this the right way. When black men show up, we get attention. If the three of us go sit somewhere in a restaurant, start talking, people start, who are they? They start to ask questions. When you walk through the elementary school, and this is not a negative, you look at the teachers, you look at the staff, when 10, 15 black men show up, it gets attention.
Yes, it does.
When we sit down in the classroom and those little boys and girls, and I'm and black and white, see a black man sitting there ready to read a kid's story, it gets their attention. And I don't know if you do this, but I always leave a few minutes to like, okay, guys, you got any questions? Now it's a dangerous thing with first and second graders because there's been some sleepy after school, but I always give them a chance to ask a couple of questions because they're curious.
Yes.
And they have asked me all types of questions, and I enjoy that too. And then one of the things I always do is always, and I try to enforce what the teachers do. And you get a rambunctious one, but I think even my presence there makes a difference, especially for those young men.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing. And I'll do my fun thing. Oh, go ahead, John.
No. I was just going to add to that. I was just going to say, last month it was a snowstorm,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. Yes.
We had 21 men show up at Marquette Elementary School in the month of December during a snowstorm.
Nice.
Jamal Spencer, WZZM TV 13 sports director,
yes,
he drove up from Muskegon, from Grand Rapids to read, and he said it was the most gratifying thing. He's hooked. He's hooked. To Melvin's point, when we did Men of Color Read in LA 10, 11, 12 years ago, South Central LA, I started an organization titled Mokiti, which is Men of Color in the Industry. And the industry is of entertainment, MOCITI. Every brother that you can almost think of has come through that organization at some point in time. The old school cats, the guys who've been around the last 15 years, and newcomers. Anyway, one of the first things that we did was we adopted an elementary school. And I said, we got to read the kids. The first time that we showed up at the elementary school, Martin Luther King Elementary School in South Central LA, we had to step over needles and drug paraphernalia to walk into the school building.
Wow.
This is South Central LA. My brother said to me, John, we with you, but do you sure you want to go into South Central LA? I was like, that's where the need is greatest. And if we should die going into the school, whatever the case may be, and I'm serious about this, I said, we will have died for something worth dying for. I meant it. And eventually, not to get too far off track, but eventually one of the guys dealing drugs on the corner, he said to me, OG, let me holler at you for a minute. I walk over to him. He said, what y'all be doing in that school? And our program was every week. He said, "What y'all be doing in that school?" He said, y'all be talking to the kids and stuff." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man," he said, "You know what, OG? If I had something like that when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't be out here slinging drugs."
Wow.
Yeah.
The first time, back to my point, the first time. Oh, and by the way, they moved their territory eventually
Mm-hmm.
out of
Mm.
respect.
Wow.
They moved their territory. The
Mm-hmm.
school changed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not making this up. The school changed, but the first time that we showed up in the school, the first time that we showed up in those hallways, to Melvin's point, the educators cried. There was a black woman who had been in education 20 plus years, and she wept like a baby when she saw us show up at that school. And we're talking LA, second largest city in the country. We might have 30 guys show up on a Friday. I mean, most of them are in the entertainment industry, so they weren't typical. Not, a lot of them didn't have 9 to 5
Mm-hmm.
jobs, but we would have just large numbers of brothers from the entertainment industry show up. And I shared with them how important it is that you give to your community,
Say that.
how important it is that you give to your community. But the educator, she had been working 20 something years at that point, 20, 25 years. She said she had never seen that image ever. Black men coming into the school, nor white men for that matter. She had never seen that image, period. But to see black men come into the school, it broke them down. We were just doing what it was that we felt that we were supposed to do. It is our obligation, it is our responsibility to help make the communities in which we live a better place in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
There you go.
That's
That's a
it.
responsibility that we all have. And if
Yes.
we all do something,
Yes.
we will live in a better community. If
That's
we
it.
all do something other than complain,
Yes. Or post
I,
like that.
I think that's this is
Melvin,
going to be very important. What you just said, John, to what we're going to be going for the next couple weeks, the couple months, because we're going to deal with some serious issues. If we just do something other than murmur and complain with
Mm-hmm.
the things that are happening in our community, we can help somebody. But we just got to get out there and do something. Pastor Burns.
You know, I was going to share a story. I periodically I run the kids, and then I always think like, where, like I know you, like where you know me from, and I run the kids, you came and read in our class, and it's gratifying. And I say, well, hey, you still reading? And they always say yes. I don't know, but it's really gratifying, because the kids remember me from that, and I'm proud of being able to do that. 1980 um, up freshman Oak University, and our dorm we share a suite. There was a grown man from China there, must have been in his 30s. Taught himself English, listening to radio and TV,
mm,
and taught himself to read. He'd come over periodically, and he was reading things and ask us to help him with words. And as we're talking, thinking of the value he had just to learn English and to learn to read, and the amount of work he put into it, and he was to become an engineer, but that amount of work and that value and being able to read always made an impression on me as we discussed today. It's an invaluable tool if we're going to manage this life, as said the gentleman earlier, to not be taken advantage of. You can live without being literate, but will you be able to live your best life? And that's what we want to see
That's right.
people
That's
living
right.
their best life.
that's good. We might have to take that. We might have to take that quote you just made. I might have to write that down. You can live without being literate, but to live your best life, you can't.
All right.
That's nice.
All right.
You better copyright that, Pastor Burns.
Hey, I give it out free every week.
John, talk to the people that have time to volunteer or to help in this endeavor?
Well, our next reading session, and we're going to be going back to Edgewood too, but our next reading session is at Marquette the 20th of January, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the 20th of January. We show up at 1 o'clock. We're there literally for 30 minutes. We read, we're in the classroom 15, 20 minutes. After all, we're not talking long attention spans. I don't have a long attention span myself. It's okay. But we're talking 15, 20 minutes. You can either grab your lunch, take it with you to go, or you can eat there with the brothers. Some of us stay and eat there. We have lunch and a beverage for you. You can take it with you, or you can eat it there. But 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of consistency makes a difference.
Yes, it
Like
does.
Melvin was saying earlier, you might not think that once a month, 30 minutes makes a difference, but it makes a huge difference. And the kids don't forget it.
Yes.
They don't forget it. Floyd Cook tells a story. Floyd Cook is what, 80?
Yeah.
Make him know
81.
Yeah. And he is our most active reader.
Yes.
It don't matter where we are. It doesn't matter what the weather's doing.
That's
Floyd
true.
Cook is there.
Yes.
And the kids all over the county see him in the store and they say, Mama, that's Mr. Floyd.
Yeah.
You know that man. And that's why I brought up his age. He's 80, 81, 82 years old. How you know that man? Because he reads to our class.
How good is that?
And isn't that awesome?
It is.
And kids recognize him everywhere he goes.
Always there.
Everywhere he goes, they recognize him and he engages them. Imagine the difference that it makes. Most of us who've done anything decent in our lives, and decent is what you think you've done. It's not my judgment. But if you can look in the mirror and say you've done anything decent with your life, there is probably a teacher in there or something to do with your education that made a difference. Somebody that you remember consistently empowering you.
Mrs. Trump, Muskegon High School.
Am I right?
You're right.
Who did you have, Greg?
Mrs. Trump at Muskegon High School, political teacher.
Okay.
Interesting name, interesting subject.
Yeah.
Yes.
No relation.
I had a second grade teacher named Miss Tyson.
Okay.
And let me give you a quick story. Hopefully, I don't get too emotional because I done got older and my sinuses act up at the drop of. They really do. They really do. I had a teacher named Miss Tyson. This was in Grand Rapids. I was in between Grand Rapids, Muskegon, between kindergarten, 11th grade. I attended 10 schools between Muskegon and Grand Rapids. 10, and wasn't nobody in the military. So we was a traveling crew, just because. But anyway, I had a teacher in second grade. There wasn't a lot of stability, but in my family at the time. But I had a teacher in second grade named Miss Tyson, who, for whatever reason, made me feel validated. She validated me. And I never, ever forgot her. And I only had her, I think, in second grade. Like I said, I attended 10 schools, but I can remember the clothes that she wore. Fast forward, I interview Justin Jennings for the documentary Black Man. This is 45 years later, or 50 years later. Okay, 50 years later. I interviewed Justin Jennings for the documentary Black Man. And while we're conversing, he says to me, I said, well, what made a difference in your life? Because in case you don't know it, Justin Jennings was illiterate when he graduated high school, but he was a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what made you decide to learn to read? What made you decide that you couldn't live life this way? He got accepted to Purdue and couldn't read.
Wow.
Mm.
Played basketball at Purdue, couldn't read. But he was tall and he was good looking and he was charismatic. He was all those things that I just mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I had a teacher who I always kept in touch with named Miss Tyson.
Wow.
Mm.
And he gave me her number. And this is while I'm interviewing him. And I just looked at him and I was frozen. And I've always wondered, where was Miss Tyson?
Mm-hmm.
He gave me her number. She's a snowbird. She's down in Florida somewhere during the winters, and she's in Michigan, I guess, somewhere during the summer. But he gave me her number. I called her and we talked for 2 hours.
That's awesome.
And I've always wondered where she was, but she helped to change my thought process and change my life. And when I would stray in the wrong direction, she and others, my memories of her helped guide me back to a place of sense. So the point is, the contact that you have with kids in elementary school or whenever is impactful for them and for you as well. What about you, Melvin? What were somebody who made a difference?
In fact, I just told her last year. I was, I'm pretty much an introvert. Was severely introverted younger days, and Mrs. Glover, Nellie Glover, David Glover's mother, in her class is when I first started speaking, raising my hand, reading out loud, because I used to never want to do it, never volunteered for it. In her class, had her twice, third and fifth grade. But she was that teacher that kind of changed things around for me, and had a chance to tell her that last summer. I sat there in her home, had a chance to tell her, and it just felt good to be able to share that with her. But always, thought about just it was in her classroom where I kind of started becoming who I was going to be.
What grade was that?
And I had her twice. It was probably about the fifth grade.
Isn't that amazing? Because I think about Mrs. Mitchell and Mrs. Spratt and Mr. Scott
Oh,
and just I can Mr. English and
oh man,
I could go on and on and on with names.
If I don't mention Miss Teresa Horn, I'll be in trouble. Oh my goodness.
Yes,
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
people that were impactful that saw something in me that pushed. And so, John, I commend you guys for doing this. We need more people like yourselves to get involved and not complain.
Yeah.
And so once again, I want to make sure that you give people information on how they can contact you. And I want to change hats for a quick second.
Men of Color Read on Facebook. If they're watching this, more than likely they have online access. So Men of Color Read. It's 4 words. I think it's 4 words. Men of Color Read. Yeah, it's 4 words. It's 4 words. And just check us out. There's a Facebook page. You can Google us. There are tons of press interviews, etc. The media has really, really, really been supportive of this effort, and we've not sent out press releases. We've not. It's just they found out about us, and they've covered us very well over the last 3 or 4 years. So you can find out tons of stories about us. And I don't know if you know this, Melvin, but interestingly enough, they've been covering Men of Color Read in cities all over the country. So somebody from Vegas reached out to us last month and said, I saw a big story on Men of Color Read on the Saturday news show here in Vegas.
Oh wow.
Sharon Jones, if you know the twins, Sharon and
Oh
Karen.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Sharon sent me a text from Detroit 3 or 4 months ago, and she was like, "Good job on the work that you guys are doing." And then I was like, "Where are you?" And she's like, "I'm at home in Detroit. They just did a whole series thing on Men of Color Read." I was like, "What?"
Oh
Somebody
wow.
else reached out to us from a prison in New York who
Okay.
said they saw us on the news. And so, Men of Color Read, our plan is that there are Men of Color Reads all over the United States of America eventually.
Excellent. John, we have 4 minutes to go, and I want you to change hats real quick. Pastor Byrne and I, in this short torn two, we're going to go on some deep issues, some really deep issues,
Uh-oh.
because we're not talking about mental health. We're not talking about suicide. We're not talking about molestation. We're not talking about things that are affecting men and women and um, things that are happening in our neighborhood. Um, talk about why is it important that we address these things and do something instead of sit back.
As far as the things that you just mentioned,
Yeah, get involved and speaking about it and making it public.
well, I think that getting involved not only helps those whom you're helping as to why you're getting involved, but it also helps you. And the same goes with holding on to things that have been destroying you from the inside out,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a reaction to most everything. And so when you talk about those things, like you mentioned, child molestation or mental illness, suicide, interestingly enough, all those things kind of work together. Like
Yeah.
all those things can lead to
Yes.
another thing.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about things that happen to somebody as a kid. Well, that often leads to depression, and that leads to
Hmm.
substance abuse, or it leads to suicide, or whatever. All those things are connected. Like our being is all connected.
Right.
And I think that when you share, or when you seek therapy, or when you seek counsel with someone that you trust, or even getting it out, you can heal easier. I believe that's been my experience just in life, is that I've been able to heal through some things
Hmm.
as a result of sharing them, or as a result of someone else confiding in me
Yes.
about what it is that they've been through in their lives, or whatever. We're all connected, and we're all God in his infinite ability, wisdom, all those things. Had
Hmm.
God wanted to, I believe that God is powerful enough where God could have given Gregory T. Roberts a world. He could have given Melvin C. Burns a world or a country. He could have given Jon Convington a town of his own. God could have done whatever God wanted to do, right?
Hmm.
God put us here together for a reason.
Right.
Yes.
And so we have to utilize
Yes.
that. I didn't say use,
Come on.
but utilize
Yes.
that for the betterment of each other, which
Yes.
means the betterment of self as well.
Yes.
But if we don't address things, then guess what? It's all for naught.
I couldn't have said it any better. And that's it. John Covington, Melvin C. Burns. We'll see you guys. Thank you so much. That's it. Torn in two for
Brother.
the new year. That's it. Thank you so much. Go sow a seed in somebody's life. Take care and God bless.